Tanya. I'd like to welcome you to Detroit Is This. I'm the host, Ivana Kalafatic, and we do this through Detroitisit, our media platform. So I'm thrilled to have you on. Tanya Allen, to make the introduction, President and Chief Executive Officer for Skillman Foundation. I'd say probably everybody's favorite foundation within the city in so many ways, because you deal with youth and you deal with the future and you deal with opportunities that some of us might not have had over our course of our lifetime. So for the next couple of half hour or so, would love to hear a little bit about your background, your inspiration, your connection to Detroit, and then we'll get into some of the work that you do. So take it away and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first, I just need to say thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to be with you and I guess to share my story. So I'm a native Detroiter. I was born and raised in the city. And I think one of the things that's unique about me in comparison to other Detroiters is that I literally grew up all over the entire city. So I'm not an East Sider or a West Sider. I've lived in, it feels like almost every corner of the city, and largely because my family moved around a lot because of economic instability. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about that is that I believe that that is the common experience for many children in Detroit. So I know what it means and what it feels like to go from one school where I was doing wonderful and then going to another school where I struggled. Because there wasn't consistency or whether or not it was adults paying attention to you. And so I feel like I had to kind of like pull my way up and out of, and to find opportunities. And so I've always just really felt like that's not the way that we should be supporting children. That really we should be creating an environment. You know, we often talk about like this notion of a pipeline, you know, how do we get kids from birth to early childhood? How do we move them, you know, to K-12 and then on to a college and career? We do have a pipeline, but the problem is that there are lots of cracks in that pipeline. And what I think about my work is about figuring out how to insulate that pipeline so that if there are cracks that kids fall through, that they get supports. Because I felt like I was lucky to make it through. And, you know, a lot of people would say, you beat the odds. And what I want to say is, it's like, I don't want to help children beat the odds. I want to change the odds. Right? We need to change the odds for kids. And so that's the way I kind of come at my work and my interest in the foundation. And then I would just say, because I'm a Detroiter and I've never had a desire to live anywhere else. I just have a love affair with the city. I have a love affair with the people who live here and the resiliency of the people of the city of Detroit, the style. You know, we got a little bit of swagger, and I like that. I like that, and I like that. You know, Detroit is a place that is historic, but it also is a place that you can change. And I think as a young person growing up in the city, where I was always navigating new places, new schools that actually had places where I was navigating change, I'm really comfortable in that space. And so I try to be my authentic self and go to places where I think there are real opportunities for change and where I can be useful, not just for myself, but in helping to execute change for other people.
When you talk about change, as a side note, I was born in Croatia, but lived in Southeast Michigan and around Detroit and the suburbs and within the city my whole life. So as an immigrant, coming from an immigrant family and a small business owner, female, you kind of have to, if you want to make something of yourself, no matter what the circumstances are, you really do have to change and learn how to adapt and learn how to change. And I think that that's a big positive characteristic. I've always felt that with folks that I know and those that are influential and leaders in many different spaces. And I also believe that mentorship and having individuals that you can either look up to or that can show you, even if it's, we just had a call not long ago with another individual on the podcast about a teacher that ended up taking them on a field trip that literally built his career when he was in middle school. So you never know, and it's really about having those opportunities to see things through different eyes, but also having people show you that too. I think mentorship is a key thing in learning how to adapt and how to change to things.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say that I think it's mentorship, and I also think it's sponsorship. And then there are just sometimes when you just need to lean in and give people opportunities, even if it's not a longer term relationship. And so I've really benefited from long-term mentorship relationships. I've always looked to people who I believe have done really amazing things in their life and their careers, and who've been open to share it, not to mimic their lives. You know, I think a lot of times we look at mentors and we say, oh, they did this, so I want to do exactly what they did. When in reality, I think we have to look to people who have an ability to navigate the environments you want to. And then you talk to them so they don't have to necessarily be in your field. And I think that there are lots of different people who can serve in a mentor role for you. And they're, you know, sometimes they're short-term experiences, sometimes they're long-term experiences. But being clear about what you want to get out of that relationship and being clear with the person that you're asking that from, whether or not they're willing to give it, has always, I think, been crucial to me in terms of having good mentors and good mentorship experiences.
To be fair though, Tanya, also we all have to know how to ask the questions. You know, a lot of people don't know how to ask the questions that they need to be clear about. So it's even getting into those loopholes, as you mentioned, within people. And it's really, you know, we're on this end, we're really big believers in human contact and the human relationship and the human, as you are as well, and the human touch points, because that's where the sensibility happens. I mean, you know, when people say, in you know, let's say in the real world where, you know, brands and companies and cities, well, all of those things are made up of human beings. You know, a brand doesn't exist just because, you know, Nike was formed out of the blue sky. You know, human beings came up with these ideas, or whatever the company is or product is. So really being able to fill those loopholes and to be able to, you know, how you say when you go to a lawyer, you never know what question to ask because you don't know the question to ask. You really also, I think so much of what you do at Skillman and what you as a person probably just possess is this opportunity to help clarify direction, even if it's in a question.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think that you should never be afraid to ask a question. And I think a lot of people get caught up in if it's the smart question and how they're presenting in the room. And I've just never been afraid of that. I actually remember when I was in college, a friend guy said to me, he's like, you're not afraid to ask a question. I'm not the person that's eager to ask a question. Like, I'm going to ask it just so I'm the person that's being paid attention to. But I am one that if I need to understand it, I want to know. And I think it's better off asking than assuming and making assumptions about things that won't matter. And then I think to your point, getting skilled at that, right? Like asking not just a question, but what's sometimes the right question and what's the question that helps you unveil and what you need to know. One of my favorite questions all the time is, if I don't know anything, is after I finish my series of questions, I'll say, and what is it that you think I should have asked? What is it that I need to know and it didn't come up in the conversation or in your
I'm going to steal that one from you.
Because most people always respond and you think like, oh, if that was so important, I'm glad I asked, because otherwise I would have missed it. So use it.
Yeah, I will take the liberty, if you don't mind, and attribute it to you. No, I think also making the right decisions in life, and all of that comes with age, time, luck. There's a million factors that happen, but your life can really go, left or right or left so easily there, and there's some things that are out of control, but the more that you can put processes in place and the more that you can focus on planning and future forward thinking, no matter if it's even just the fact of figuring out how to get your home finances in order, no matter if it's even figuring out what type of a school you might consider going to, those are big moves for all of us, and figuring out how you make those plans is, I think, a really key thing with organizations like Skillman too, because you teach, and I want to hear from you, obviously, what it is that Skillman's doing and best at, but you're really also teaching the ground rules of life in many ways, practical, but also the emotional, the EQ and the IQ at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And supporting the mechanisms around it, right? Supporting that conversation around it.
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the things I believe is, I think between the ages of kind of like 14 and 24, 14 and 26 are probably the most influential in our lives. It doesn't mean that you can't be influenced before or after. And so what you do during that time is pretty critical. And the problem is that when you're 14 years old, you are not a good decision maker. Not most of us, right?
Yeah.
And so, or even sometimes when you're 19 or when you're 23, I know I've made some terrible decisions during those time periods. And so what we're trying to do at the Skillman Foundation is to make sure that we put as many caring adults around children during those time frames that will help them figure out a path that is unique and right for that young person. So one of the things that I've always felt like is that education is an important lever that everybody has. And a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, maybe somebody doesn't want to go to college, or somebody doesn't want to, they want to go into work. I never want to begrudge anybody that choice, but I never want to begrudge that choice because they're not ready or capable. And I think that's the systemic problem that we have in our society, is that we want to give that decision or choice to people without actually giving them the opportunity. And so if at the foundation, we really think about this as, we want every young person to be prepared. They should be graduating high school in a way that they are equipped to make any choice. I want to go to college, or I don't want to go to college. I want to go to work. I don't want to go. I want to build a career. I don't want to build a career. But I'm making that choice based on my interests, not because of my readiness or lack of capacity. And so we're trying to make that systemic change, that everybody has an opportunity. We call it the opportunity agenda. And we think that that's really about college and work readiness. We also know it's about that educational system being set up so that it really supports students for where they're at and what they need. And then lastly, how do we use community resources to support young people? And we know that after school and youth development programming is one of the ways that young people come in contact with adults, have experiences where they actually get to lead or to understand their own power and agency. So what we're trying to do is create those opportunities that equip young people so that they can make, to your point before, how do you make these right decisions? And understanding that sometimes if you don't make the right decision, that's okay. Like, you do have another opportunity. It's called the next day, right? Like, you can change and shift, make adjustments in your life, and helping young people to understand that. And I've always found that to be true for myself. And I found it true for my children, my daughters, is that I always say to them, you always have an opportunity. Literally, anytime you want to change, you can. It's called the next morning. And I think a lot of times we tell people, if you make a mistake, it's going to take a long time for you to recover. Yes, there is some recovery time, but in order to get into recovery, it just takes one step. And we want young people to understand that they have the ingenuity to do it. They have the talent to do whatever it takes in their life. If they want to be a business owner, they want to be a college professor, if they want to be an essential worker, it's their choice, and they are equipped to do so.
Isn't it amazing if you look at the bigger picture, like we as humans, how lucky we are to be who we are and to have the opportunities that we do and to be able to rationalize and really to not take or lose advantage of that upper hand that we have as people, to really be able to take control of our own lives, no matter what the circumstances. And this is also where it gets a little challenging within some of the scenarios within a city like Detroit, and every city on the planet is like a city like Detroit. I'm a huge proponent of education. I think that I believe that systemically, the number one reason why many things don't happen the way that they potentially positively could for this planet is due to lack of education. I believe that's the number one challenge for many. What do you think for you when you're looking at Detroit and Detroit youth? What is a challenge that you see within the future of Detroit youth? Upside too, but is there a challenge that you see?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think obviously if we don't solve for our educational challenges, that we're going to we lose out on really maximizing the talent that's in our city.
Mm-hmm.
And I often call our young people the city's successors. Like, this is their birthright. So if we really believe in this city, if we really believe that the city's recovery is sustainable and that it's going to be inclusive, then we have to make sure that the generation that will inherit this city actually are equipped to do so. And I believe inherently they are. Now, what we need to do is make sure that the systems support them, right? So I think education is a part of it. I also think creating conditions where young people are safe, not just, safety is not just the absence of harm, it's the presence of well-being, right? And so we don't talk about that. Like, how do we create environments where young people feel emotionally and physically and socially safe? And I think that when we talk about doing work in neighborhoods, that's an important part of it. And it's also a part of their own development, helping them deal with a lot of the traumatic experiences that they have by living in neighborhoods where it is crime ridden, or it lacks beauty, to traditional beauty because of blight and et cetera. But also helping them to recognize and understand that even though they live in those neighborhoods where it feels like there's so much deprivation, that there are also lots of assets. Like, there are community helpers in those neighborhoods. There are parents and families that show up every single day that do heroic work that we don't ever acknowledge in our city, and that these young people do heroic work just by showing up and making sure that their voices are heard, that they're doing all of the right things. And we have to make sure that if they're doing all of the right things, that the system should be uplifting them, not preventing them from actually coming into their full human kind of potential. And I think that's what I would say the big challenge is that we have to make sure that the systems align with the human potential and it really supports them. And that shows up in our educational system, but it shows up in all kinds of other systems that we have. And we see it especially as we talk about the systemic racism that structurally exists in our society. And so those are the kinds of things I think we have to wrestle with if we really want to create the sustainable change.
God, there's 101 things to talk about here. This should be 3 hours, but I know you have to run. So can you leave us with 3 pearls of wisdom that you would say for youth and for just the future of all of us as a whole, as a community within Detroit, that are things that you really do believe in?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. So I always have a ton of Tanya-isms, so I have to figure out if I can pull one out. I think the first one I would say, and it's a mantra I've been using a lot lately, is that kindness is contagious. And so really just focusing on how I show up as my best self and how we all show up in our best selves, and giving each other grace, but practicing this notion of relentless kindness. I think the second thing I would say is we have to get serious about inclusion. And inclusion, to me, inclusion and equity is not about inviting people to the table and giving them a folding chair. Like, if we really want this to be important, then we have to make equity king. And that means giving everybody a voice, giving everybody the ability to contribute to the agenda, to sit at the table, to call the meeting. And so I would say that. And then let me see, what else? I got all these notes.
Maybe something for the future also for your girls. What do you tell them when they leave in the morning? They have their stuff to do.
Well, I always tell them that they're beautiful, they're blessed, and they're brilliant. And so that's what I would say, is that we just have to always remember that we're equipped with that we're more than enough. We're equipped with everything that we need on our journey. And so that's what I would say, that we're more than enough.
Gorgeous. Tanya, keep doing everything you're doing. We're supporting you in every which way we can. Everybody loves what the Skillman Foundation is doing. And it stems from you, and as we mentioned earlier, also from your team and the belief systems that you hold. And it's very clear that there's a positive, loving step and moves forward that you have with Skillman, what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's the main thing we have to do, is lead with love.
Yeah, agreed. Have a fantastic day, and hopefully we'll see you soon again, Tanya. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ivana. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Talk soon. Bye.